April 17th, the BC NDP will select a new provincial leader to replace Carol James, a leader they fairly brutally eased out, hoping a new leader will beat the provincial Liberals in the next BC election. It is my pleasure to welcome Globe and Mail journalists Rod Mickleburgh and Gary Mason back to Studio 4 to tell us more about local politics. I bet we were all watching golf yesterday instead of the debate.
Guilty.
Yeah.
I'm guilty too, the Masters.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Well, you see, it was so close.
Well, it was one
And
of
I don't
those
mean the
Masters
political
that was
debate
fantastic.
isn't really good and fun.
Yeah. I think that I probably have watched every Masters for the last 30 years, and that was probably one of the best. Definitely in the top
Yes.
5.
Yeah.
Absolutely top 5.
I totally agree with you when you've got like 10 under 4, 10 under, and even the commentators were not calling it, you noticed.
And even Tiger was in the mix there for a while.
I know, and I'd just love to be in all the living rooms saying, oh, I think it's time Tiger came back. We were discussing things like they said to Tiger, his handlers, you'll have to lose a lot of golf or people are going to think you didn't really care about your wife. And, you know, so we were talking about
He's over that hump.
Yeah, you're over that
Now
hump.
he's having trouble, though.
Well, that's the thing. But, you know,
It's getting into his head a
he
little
never
bit.
quits.
No.
No. he
Well, you're here to talk about politics.
doesn't. Oh, yeah.
Me too. I did flip back and forth, I must say.
You're
See, I'm
better,
very earnest.
A better man than us, as they say.
So, this particular race, who's on first, do you think?
Well, if you talk to Farnworth and Adrian Dix, Mike Farnworth, Adrian Dix,
Yes.
they both believe that they're 1 and 2, but they don't know who's 1 and who's 2. So I think that the general consensus is that those are the 2 guys at the top, and Horgan is 3rd. And the question is, you know, can Horgan pull it off? We're not sure, but 1 and 2 right now, Dix, Farnworth. What order we don't know.
And if Larson drops out or doesn't get to where he would like to get, he will throw his support to Horgan. Is that true?
That's right.
But we don't know how many votes that is. Probably it's not a lot of votes. So, again, Nicholas Simons did the same thing. He's already withdrawn. I mean, Larson's going to be in there on the final ballot, and then he'll be the first off. And Nicholas Simons dropped, also went to Horgan, but neither of them had generated much support. A lot of respect, but very few, I would think, delegates or members to vote that were going to vote for them. So Horgan picks up some of those, but it's, you know, it's hard to see Horgan actually having enough votes to be in there at the end. I mean, he's impressed a lot of people. John Horgan has had you know, some momentum towards the end, but he started a long way back, and you know, it's going to be tough.
And he suggested there needs to be a tax commission.
Right. Christy Clark has kind of announced the same thing. Basically, it's to take a look at all the taxes, levies, fees, and all that, and see where we stack up, and then kind of allow this commission to make some recommendations on where the province should go. So I think it's a good idea. I think it's an excellent idea, because we only quite often just look on the tax side without factoring in all the levies and fees that Crown corporations impose on us, which is really just another form of taxation, right? So.
One of the great lines in the debate yesterday, which you may have missed, was it was Larson when he said you should tax THC. Is that the marijuana element? Instead of HST. I thought it was pretty good.
Dana Larson,
like
I mean, he's not going to win, and everyone just wrote him off as a nuisance candidate at the beginning. But, you know, like, he's shown that he's more of just a one-issue hemp pro-marijuana candidate. He's addressed a lot of the issues. He's a throwback in his policies, anyway, to the old-time CCF, NDP, down with the corporations, let's have socialist policies. He's shown a good sense of humor. He's articulate. And, of course, he's going nowhere in the race, but he's made a point.
He's also got off the best line of the entire campaign. When the candidates were asked at one of the forums which type of salmon they are, Dana Larson said, well, as a former president or head of the BC Marijuana Party, I guess I'd have to say I'd be a smoked salmon.
Then he complained on Twitter that he said, I make one good line and that's all anybody's talking about. I've got other policies too.
But it's a Tweety universe, as you know, and so many of the politicians today have to tweet, be on Facebook, have certainly big presence in social media, especially to get the youth vote out.
That's what everyone says.
You believe it?
No, I've seen no evidence of it. It's something you can write about, and you can find a couple of young people maybe that have responded that way, but boy, I don't see it.
You didn't see Christy Clark doing it to great effect?
Well, I don't know. I think she would have been.
I think she did, but I think it's very inconclusive, the kind of impact that Twitter is having on any of these campaigns. I mean, everybody talks about it, but I'd like to see a real study with some real numbers and hard facts that suggest, yes, Twitter put her over the top.
How many people are on Twitter compared to how many people read the Globe and Mail every day?
Well, that's the thing. I read the Globe and Mail every day, I promise you. Have you written in this particular Globe today, this morning?
Not today.
When do your columns run?
It's still worth picking up, though.
Of course it is. But when do your columns run? Do you have a regular?
You don't know?
No, I don't.
I run Friday.
You run only Friday?
He's in the paper all the time. You can't pick up a Globe without reading Mason.
Right.
It's a little tiresome.
No.
Yeah. Well, we can talk about that.
Excellent.
Excellent writers, both of you, and journalists, good go-to guys. I was reading Von Palmer, speaking of columnists, and he suggested that Adrian Dix was relentlessly serious, Farnworth was easygoing, John Horgan pragmatic.
I think those are fair characterizations. I mean, Adrian is an extremely serious guy. I think Mike Farnworth can be pretty serious at times, too. I think they all can be, but Adrian can be almost overbearing in terms of his seriousness and earnestness.
Okay.
But he's a hardworking guy, a real hardworking guy.
And he's very smart.
Yeah.
His policies are well thought out, as he says. He's the only one that's actually costed his policies and figured out how they would work with the overall monetary situation with the province, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The problem he has is that he's, first of all, is very close to the old Glenn Clark administration, and he doesn't have that sort of winning people atmosphere. He seems kind of doctrinaire and a bit hard line. He would dispute that, but you don't get a feeling of warmth from Adrian. And of course, usually, you talk to him privately, he's, of course, fine and loves sports.
As most politicians are.
He's a big sports fan, all that kind of stuff. But, I think of all the three leading candidates, probably the Liberals would prefer Mr. Dix to win because they think he was the most beatable.
Mr. Dix. Farnworth, the most contentious for Christy Clark. If it is Christy Clark, I'm assuming it'll be Premier Christy Clark. Oh,
yeah. Well, I mean, I think that's a given. All the polling puts Farnworth way out in front of the two other main rivals, Horgan and Dix. I mean, it's not even close in terms of who the public believes has the best chance of making it competitive against Christy Clark. I mean, Farnworth still comes up short against the Premier, but Dix and Horgan are way, way back. So I think part of it is name recognition. I mean, Farnworth, he has a bigger name in the province than Dix and than Horgan. I think that's part of it. But I think he's good in front of the camera. He's done really well in opposition for the New Democrats. But just on that one thing, when you talk about the debates, the one person who a lot of people feel did the best was Horgan. He's, with a microphone in his hand, he's fantastic. He's more of a populist than the other two guys. He might do the best against, Clark, but I don't think he's going to get the chance.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I've had my eye on Horgan from the beginning because the thing that Horgan, first of all, he's good. No problem with that. But he's a fresher face than Adrian Dix and Mike Farnworth. And one reason he doesn't show well in the polls is that he hasn't been huge on the public radar.
Yeah.
But if he got the leadership, of course, then all this attention would be focused on him. The public would be interested. Who's John Horgan? And I think he would, show reasonably well. I mean, you never know until somebody's actually in the job as leader, how they're going to be as leader. But, Horgan, I think, probably makes Christy Clark more nervous than the others just because he's a fresher face, whereas Farnworth and Adrian Dix are seen as more been around there forever. And believe it or not, Christy Clark, who spent almost a lifetime in politics, is getting an advantage as being a fresh face in the political landscape.
Change.
Well, perception in politics is everything.
For sure. Family, also family. This is about family. This is about helping families, which is really something the NDP always says.
Yeah.
Right.
Someone said, I can't remember who it was, that you're all NDP, you just don't know it.
Yeah, that was Horgan.
Was that Horgan?
Yeah, that was Horgan.
You're actually all NDP, you
yeah,
just don't know it.
Yeah.
Is Horgan a businessman?
No, he's a political guy.
He's been a political guy, kind of a backroom guy. He was a chief of staff for
everybody.
Yeah, for
Okay,
a
so
lot
he's
of,
been in the trenches.
For
He knows.
not chief of staff for, was it for Ujjal? Anyway, for, there's a succession of 4 NDP premiers there, and he was involved in various positions with all of them.
Yeah.
He had that good line about, Ujjal wasn't very good and then went to the Liberals. He said, and Mike Harcourt and Glenn Clark and Dan Miller and that other guy at the end, I can't remember his name.
Who is most Harcourt like?
Farnworth.
Yeah.
Farnworth.
And Harcourt came out on Friday, of course, and endorsed Mike Farnworth. They're going to meet the media today, the two of them, which is interesting because Harcourt had said all along that he wasn't going to endorse anybody. He told John Horgan he was not going to endorse anybody. And then, for some surprise reason, he decided to change his mind and come out and support Mike Farnworth.
Okay.
So the question is, how much weight does that carry in the party today? I think it's significant myself.
It certainly helps, Mike. There's no question about that.
And how will they energize the base? Target those who don't vote at all, get people out, and unite the caucus after the Carol James demise?
Yeah, I mean, this is Adrian.
4 questions.
Adrian Dix's strategy is energize the base, and the belief there is you have to have kind of a more left-leaning policy platform to energize the base of the NDP, which people believe are sort of more ideologically to the left than to the center. So that's his strategy. Adrian Dix, have a kind of a left-leaning policy platform and get people in the party excited again and get them out to vote. That's his strategy for winning. Mike Farnworth's strategy is to go more center, try and get some of these liberals who might be inclined to vote NDP with some sort of aggressive social policy platform. That's his, expand the tent. That's his strategy for winning. So it's who do you think has the best strategy?
One of the things Adrian Dix has specifically articulated is that he's also going after the people that don't vote. Which is a growing number, which is, which to me seems like a dubious strategy. If they're not voting, how are you going to convince them to vote? And John Cummins, the new leader of the BC, well, the incoming leader of the BC Conservative Party, says that's where I'm getting my votes too, from all these people that don't vote. But if they're not voting, I mean, are they really going to be galvanized to go to the polls by Adrian Dix or John Cummins or so on?
I don't think it's such a bad strategy, though. I mean,
but how do you do it?
There's 1.4
it's
million.
Easy to say it.
1.4 million people who didn't vote that could have voted in the last election. Surely there's got to be something that you can put before a fraction of those people. See, it wouldn't take much, Rod, to convert some of those people, and the NDP would win an election. So why can't you get excited?
What is the something is the question.
Well, first of all, Christy Clark will get some of those people.
Probably.
One thinks. And how do you woo them? If you woo them with Adrian Dix's kind of platform, which I'm not criticizing it, but it's more left than the other ones, and that might get people excited. But then you may be turning off other people. It seems like a dubious strategy because it's such an unknown. I mean, go after them, of course, but how do you do it? And it's very uncertain, and there's no polling as to why they don't vote or anything like that.
So you talk about schools, health, HST, what? All of the above.
All of the above, yeah. And in Adrian Dix's case, he wants to go after the banks and the big corporations and make them pay more of their share. And I think there's a lot of people today, people are feeling the pinch everywhere, and that could be a real compelling idea for them. Like, why shouldn't the banks that reap these enormous profits, why shouldn't they pay a little bit more?
And it's not a lot more, as it's not like when you say he's going after the banks, he is, in the sense that nobody else is even mentioning the banks and so on, but it's still very minimal.
And give small business a break.
Well, there was a fantastic story in our paper the other day about these tax cuts that corporations in Canada received.
Right.
They were supposed to use these tax cuts to generate job growth.
Yeah.
And the studies showed that most of these corporations aren't creating jobs. They're stuffing their reserves. They're stockpiling this cash that they're saving, I guess maybe for a rainy day, but they're not creating jobs with it.
Yeah, they just look at it as a bonus, and they stuff it away, and they make allowances for the corporate tax cuts as a price of doing business, and it's not like it stifles them at all.
Well, you two have to get back to work. I know that.
Are we not going to have to predict who's going to win?
Okay.
I actually think No, I'm not calling it. After all that, bold words. I can never go into politics.
Words. Okay.
Mike Farnworth.
Actually, if I had to put money, I would say Farnworth, but I think it's far from a sure thing.
Well, voting starts today.
Horgan's going to be the key.
You know it won't be Carol James.
Yeah.
How about that?
Yeah.